In this video, I'm going to be talking about why we're finally starting to see some movement from Dropbox. Roll the intro.
Trapped in the concept, falsely accused, was used, and misled. I'm hoping you can rest in peace.
So for those of you that are not aware, Dropbox hit its 52-week high on Friday, hitting over $27. I'm not really sure where the stock's going to be at the time of you guys seeing this, but as of right now, it's over $27. So some people might be confused as to why. Why is this stock finally starting to move? Why on Friday? Why on Friday, March 12th? Because on Friday, there wasn't really any news that came out around Dropbox. There wasn't. The stock just kind of jumped 6%. There really wasn't any news to justify it on that Thursday or Friday. And we're going to get into what I think happened in this video, why I think this stock is finally starting to see movement, all of that jazz. So hope you guys enjoy this. If you do, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. That really helps the channel grow and really helps me out massively. Also, if this is the first video you're seeing, make sure to subscribe down below. It's completely free to subscribe. Remember that. Go ahead and subscribe. Turn on that notification bell if you want to see more videos like this. But anyway, not too long ago, Dropbox announced that it's acquiring DocSend for $165 million. Dropbox announced today that it plans to acquire DocSend for $165 million. The company helps customers share and track documents by sending a secure link instead of an attachment. We're announcing that we're acquiring DocSend to help us deliver an even broader set of tools for remote work, and DocSend helps customers securely manage and share their business-critical documents, backed by powerful engagement analytics. Dropbox CEO Drew Houston told me. When combined with the electronic signature capability of HelloSign, which Dropbox announced in 2019, the acquisition gives the company an end-to-end document sharing workflow it had been missing. Dropbox, DocSend, and HelloSign will be able to offer a full suite of self-serve products to help our millions of customers manage the entire critical document workflows and give more control over all aspects of that, Houston explained. Houston and DocSend co-founder and CEO Russ Hedleston have known each other for years and have an established relationship. In fact, Hedleston worked for Dropbox as a summer intern in 2010. He even ran the idea for the company by Houston prior to launching in 2013, who gave it his seal of approval, and the two companies have been partners for some time. We've just been following the thread of external sending, which has kind of evolved and opened up into all these different workflows. And it's just really interesting that by just being laser focused on that, we've been able to create a really differentiated product that users love a ton, Hedleston said. Those workflows include creative, sales, client services, or startups using DocSend to deliver proposals or pitch decks and track engagement. In fact, among the earliest use cases for the company was helping startups track engagement with their pitch decks at VC firms. The company raised a modest amount of money along the way, just $15.3 million according to Crunchbase. But Hedleston says that he wanted to build a company that was self-sufficient, and raising more VC dollars was never a priority or a necessity. We had VCs chase us to give us more money all the time, and what we would tell our employees is that we don't keep count based on money raised or headcount. It's just about building a great company, he said. The builder's attitude was one of the things that attracted Houston to the company. We're big believers in the model of a product growth and capital efficiency and building really intuitive products that are viral, and that's a ton of what attracted us to DocSend, Houston said. While DocSend has 17,000 customers, Houston says the acquisition gives the company the opportunity to get in front of a much larger customer base as part of Dropbox. Now, you guys are going to see some analysts who simply say this is unimportant, and I feel this went really under the radar at first, but I feel like this is kind of a big deal. But what does this really mean? Because every acquisition a company makes, there's a reason. And when a company buys out another company, they're buying it because they believe in their eyes that company they bought should be able to make them more money. And if they're not viewing it that way, then there's really no reason to buy out a company, right? But basically, good or bad, there's always reasons, there's always upside, and there's always risk that comes with every acquisition. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, why did Dropbox acquire this company? Why? Well, look at it this way. They already own HelloSign, as they talked about in that article. They've owned them since 2019. But by buying DocSend, that's going to allow them to reach a larger customer base. And on top of that, it's a product that's going to fit extremely well with their current ecosystem they already have in place. Now, I view this as a very similar transaction to when Facebook bought Instagram. Now, obviously that's a little bit different, but when Facebook bought Instagram, in my eyes and looking back, it was clear that Facebook and Instagram were structured in a way that they were going to be able to mesh extremely well. And I view DocSend and Dropbox as a very similar acquisition here. Anyway, look at it this way. So DocSend pricing for their products, the standard pricing is $45. That's what we're going to use here. They have approximately 17,000 customers. So working out rough revenue numbers here. If we take $45 per month, multiply that by 12 for 12 months, then multiply that number, which is 540, by 17,000, that comes out to about 9.18 million, so we'll round it up to 9.2 million in revenue. Now, another important note, another important component here, if you do a little bit of reverse math here, take that number of 9.18 million, divide that by 12, again, kind of backtracking, that number comes out, as we already talked about, to 540. And remember, Dropbox already has a current ARPU, or average revenue per paying user, otherwise how much they're making off of every single paying user that they have, of about $128, we'll say, as of their most recent earnings. So this isn't only going to increase their revenue numbers, but this is also going to increase their ARPU as well. And remember, since this stock is on the move and it's on the way up, this is only going to help out the company's balance sheet. Since Dropbox recently raised $1.3 billion in debt. Now, you might be a little confused as to how debt is going to help out their balance sheet, but I'm going to explain that in just a second. Dropbox priced 3 million convertible senior notes due 2026 and 653 million convertible senior notes due 2028 from an upsized debt offering and a private placement and qualified institutional buyers to raise 1.286 billion. The offering was upsized from 1.135 billion announced previously. Dropbox intends to utilize 58.6 million from the offering proceeds towards convertible note hedge transactions, 200 million to repurchase shares at Tuesday's closing price of $23.18 per share. The 2026 notes may be converted at an initial conversion rate of 26.1458 shares per $1,000, principal amount of such notes, or $38.25 per share, and the 2028 notes may be converted at an initial conversion rate of 28.2889 shares per $1,000, principal amount of such notes, or $35.35 per share. So this article is obviously a little bit older, but the logic and the principles behind it obviously still apply. They also still have their share buyback program that they announced in their last earnings. So when this stock, and in my mind this stock is going to $60 plus eventually, when this stock does go to $60 plus, this company is going to make a lot of money because first of all, they have the share buyback program, then they're taking out more money, they're raising more debt so they can buy back their shares. So when this stock, like I just said, when it goes to $60, obviously with all those shares they own, when the share price goes up, they're going to make money, those shares are going to increase in value. So I think this is a really smart move by this management team, or it was a really smart move when they did take out that debt, so they could buy back their own shares, because they're saying to themselves, this stock is ridiculously undervalued, this stock is disgustingly disrespected, so why don't we buy back our own shares now in the 20s and just raise more money and buy back those shares in the 20s, so when the stock is $60 plus, we make all that money back and we're betting on ourselves, you know? You never question why an NFL player bets on themselves, you know? Dak Prescott, he wants to play under the franchise tag.
Why talk about that? You know what I mean?
Fine, you don't want to pay me? Fine, I'll just play out. I'll play it out, and when I show you what I have, I'll just go get paid. And that's what he did. And Dropbox is doing something very similar here in my personal opinion. Now, to those newer investors out there, you might be a little confused as to why taking out this debt, why raising this money was a good thing for Dropbox. And if that analogy I just threw out there didn't make sense, it all goes back to leveraging your money like I always talk about. Look at it like buying a new car. Say you can buy a $20,000 car up front in cash. You can do that, or you can get a low interest rate, make the 20% down payment or whatever down payment you want to make, whether it's 10%, 30%, whatever the case may be, and put that money elsewhere to make you more money and raise more money over time, or turn that money into more money. That's the principles that they're going for here. That's the fundamentals that they're going for here. And like I just said, I think this is a genius move by the management team. And if I was in this situation, I would do the same exact thing. And lastly, the last thing I'm going to talk about here, and I read this the other day, and I thought this might be it. It might be the time. I think Wall Street is starting to wake up about Dropbox. I think they're in the early stages. I really do. I truly believe they're starting to wake up, and the eyes and ears are starting to turn. I think Wall Street's finally starting to see where society is going, these acquisitions that Dropbox keep making and adding to their ecosystem, where cloud's gonna be in the coming years. I really think they're starting to wake up. And the way I look at Dropbox and the way they keep acquiring these companies, I kind of look at it as the Patriots, for example.
We saw a weak team, the New England Patriots. Let's face it, they're not good anymore.
So they might make these very subtle moves, these very under the radar transactions that you really might not think too much of. You might just be thinking, oh, all right, that guy's washed up, or that guy's just a nobody, but then they plug them in and they get maximum results out of them. And this is how not only I view this DocSend transaction, that's how I view the acquisition of HelloSign in 2019 when I looked into it. I really think that this is how this company should be looked at, because they keep making these small moves that no one keeps talking about, and they're just like, wow, that actually worked out well for them. Wow, that also really worked out well for them. I really look at it that way, and I think Wall Street's really starting to see that, and they're like, oh wow, we might have one here. Now, as for what I'm doing with Dropbox right now, if I'm buying it, selling, whatever the case may be, I'm definitely not selling it, that's for sure.
I'm not leaving.
It's actually kind of attractive for me here, but me personally, I already have a pretty good position built in Dropbox, so it's just a hold for me at the end of the day. But believe me, every single day I ask myself, I'm like, Josh, why don't you buy more of this stock? Why didn't you buy more of this stock? Why didn't you buy this stock heavier? And I'm saying this to myself because of really everything I just named and everything I've talked about so far in this video. Fantastic execution, fantastic management team. Cloud's just gonna become more of an essential service over the years. And at the end of the day, it's really just a great product. Like I've said in previous videos, I used Google Drive for years. I loved Google Drive. I had nothing but great things to say about Google Drive. But when I first started looking into Dropbox, and obviously I like to use and try out the products of the companies I look to invest in, and I think that's very smart to do. But when I started to look into Dropbox and I started to try out the product, I immediately switched everything out of Google Drive, and now I only use Dropbox, and I have absolutely no desire, I have no plans to go back to Google Drive anytime soon. Anyway, getting back on track here, if I was someone who did not own Dropbox, would I be willing to buy it at these levels? At $27, would I be willing to pay those prices for Dropbox? And honestly, I really don't think it's that bad of an idea. And especially because I know we talk about a lot on this channel about newer investors and things newer investors should do. And if you're like picking one of your first stocks, I wouldn't put this in like the beginning, like early tiers. Like, you know, if you're like just getting in the stock market, I wouldn't say this is like the first company you should look into, but I think it's a good beginner stock. I'll put it in like the mid-level tier, I guess you can say. Like not quite beginner, but definitely not advanced by any means. But if you looked into a couple different companies and if you understood those well and things are going well, I think this is actually a pretty good one to look into and one to think about acquiring. Because in my opinion, there's very, very low downside. It still trades very cheap. It trades at a PE of 20. That's very, very cheap. A PE of 20 is very, very cheap, and that's after a 6% move upwards. And obviously make sure you're doing your own research, you're developing your own opinions and all that, but I'm looking at this stock and I'm like, what are the odds of this stock going down 50%? What are the odds of this stock going to $14 over the next 3 years? And I'm looking at it and I'm taking all these things into consideration, and I'm like, probably not a very good chance of this stock going to $14. I feel like that's very, very low risk in this stock. Then I'm also looking at it on the other side. I'm like, what are the odds of this stock going to $60 over the next 3 years? And I'm looking at all the same things and I'm like, probably a pretty good chance, to be perfectly honest with you. But hey, I could be wrong. I could definitely be wrong. There's always a chance you're gonna be wrong. But at the end of the day, I feel like this is a stock that's going to make me a lot of money. And I'm very excited to what we're gonna see out of this stock over the next few years. Anyway, guys, in saying that, that's gonna be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you did get some value out of it, please drop a like on the video. That really helps out the channel, really helps the channel grow. And I would really appreciate it. If you wanna subscribe and turn on that notification bell so you see more videos like this and you don't miss any future uploads, please feel free to do that as well. I would also really appreciate that. Let me know down in the comments what you think of Dropbox, if you're buying it, if you're selling it, what you think of all the things we've talked about in this video. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next video.